Warm greetings from Silver Bay. I hope you are well wherever you are, and thank you for being a part of what we're doing here at Silver Bay. My name is Bruce Tamlyn. I recently retired from my position as chaplain at Silver Bay, and I'm grateful that Silver Bay has invited me back in a very limited part-time way to offer programs like this one. Today, we're in the library at Trinity House on the campus of Silver Bay, and I'm working with Austin Porth, who's our Silver Bay's digital marketing and media specialist, who is filming this program. Again, thank you, Austin, for your work on this. And today is a number in a series that we're doing on this whole idea of making the most of this precious life. This series will actually go through all of 2023 with 2 sessions each month that way. And today we're finishing up a series that we've been on called The 10 Core Components of Living a Centered and Joy-Filled Life. And this series, again, is part of the Inside Silver Bay program. And what I'm hoping to do in this series of programs is to allow us to continue to grow into joyful, contented, peaceful, hopeful folks, people of life that way, and so making the most of this precious life. And as we've done in each of our previous programs, we always start off with a centering, relaxing few minutes together that can kind of prepare us for our time together. So I'm going to step over to this chair, and I would invite you to find a comfortable chair in your home, wherever you might be, and that you would take a minute to sit in that chair and to feel the support of the floor and feel the support of the chair. And we're just going to do a short body scan to try to eliminate and just take away those parts of our body where we're holding on to tension in that way. And so let me invite you, just close your eyes and take a breath or so, a couple breaths, and again to feel the support of the chair, and you can relax into the chair and the floor. And we're just going to start at our feet and to see if we're holding any tension down in our feet, ankles. And if we are, just to let that tension go. And then we move up to our lower legs, our calf muscles, our knees, and see if we're holding any tension there. And just let that tension go. And let that part of your body just relax. And then to move up into our thighs and our torso. And just see if we're holding any tension there. And let that tension go. And then moving up into our stomach and chest area. And our arms, and just allowing any tension we might be holding there to be released. And then focusing on our shoulders for a moment, just to see if there's any tension in our shoulders, and especially in our neck area. Our neck is where so many of us hold tension. And then up into our head. And again, this brief body scan, just letting go of tension wherever you might be holding on to it. And now I would like to just do a short breathing exercise. Some might think about it as meditation, or some might think about it as centering prayer, quiet time. And it's very simple, but what we're doing is focusing on our breath. We're aware of our inhalation, our inhaling, of our breath, and then the exhaling of our breath. We do this all day long, inhale and exhale, but we're usually not conscious of it. It just usually happens automatically. But what I'd like us to do is just to focus our mind's eye on our breath, to be aware of inhaling and then be aware of exhaling. And as we exhale, just saying a word that brings a sense of calm to you. Might be the word peace or joy or love, friendship, just a word that means for you and brings to you a sense of calm. And so again, in a very simple way, we're aware of our breath coming in and the exhaling of our breath as we exhale. And as we exhale, just saying our word in our mind's eye. So let us just do this for a few minutes together. Aware of our inhalation and our exhalation, or exhaling. And as we exhale, saying our word. I want to bring us back. I know we could do this longer, and I hope that maybe you might be able to do this at a different time when you have time available, and do this sort of centering exercise as sort of a spiritual practice each day to kind of bring a calm and a sense of wholeness and a sense of fullness to yourself that way. So thank you for doing this together, and again, I hope you might be able to do this on your own as you feel called to. So again, our last number of sessions have been focused on these 10 core components of living a centered and joy-filled life. I just find myself so committed to this idea that our life is designed to be good. Our life is designed to be a life that really brings an inner sense of joy and peace to us. I'm aware that our world around us has so much going on and so many things in the news and so many things coming at us that we get pulled away from what we might think about as a centered and a joy-filled life. But this is the way it was designed, and that's what this whole series over 2023 is really about. And I really appreciate your participating with me on this, and I do hope it's helpful for you. Now, we've been looking at these 10 core components. We've done 8 of them so far. And the last 2, I feel so strongly about that we're going to do a separate session on each one. And so our 9th one is what I'm calling expressing emotion. Expressing emotion. And our last one, which we'll do next time, is living with gratitude. I find these 2 to be so important for us. And when I talk about expressing emotion, of course there's lots of emotions we express. Ecstasy and joy, that way we can express that. And we can also express sorrow. And so the one that I'd like to focus on today in expressing emotion is expressing emotion around crying or loss, or shedding tears that way. I'm making an assumption, but I'm hoping that we find it more common for us and comfortable to express emotion around joy and ecstasy and beauty, and being able to have that be an important component to our life. And it may at some point do a specific program on that, but I would like to focus on, again, this idea of crying, being aware of tears, being aware of sadness in that, and being able to express that in ways that are healthy for us that way. Because I don't think we do that as well in our culture, in our society. We have trouble crying with others, or maybe in public that way, and we tend to look upon sort of crying maybe with a sort of a negative sort of connotation to it. And so that's why I wanted to focus on that today for a few minutes with us. Much of what I'm going to share with you today, some of it anyway, comes out of an article that was in Atlantic magazine, The Atlantic. It was written by Arthur C. Brooks, and it was called this idea of crying, an important emotion. And so I want to begin this session around sort of expressing emotion, about talking about the idea of helping couples prepare to be married and performing their wedding ceremony. I've done many over the last 30 years here at Silver Bay, and feel privileged and honored to do those ceremonies. But what I have found is that it's important. I learned this early on, that couples expressed, when I said, what's a fear you have about getting married and all of that, and about being a new couple, and they would talk about a lot of different things. And then I would say, do you have any fears about the ceremony? We've gone over the ceremony, and oftentimes they would say, well, I'm afraid I'm going to cry at the ceremony as I do my vows. And I would hear this quite often. It was afraid they were going to cry. And so I started way back when to talk about tears as part of the wedding ceremony, and that it's a normal thing, and it's an okay thing, and it's very an acceptable thing that way. And so I would talk with the couples about this, and I would say, if your tears are an expression of the love that you have for each other, and it's such a beautiful part of the ceremony, so we welcome them. They're just part of the ceremony if tears come that way. And I have noticed over the years that not only the couple that are getting married might have tears, but people in the audience might have tears. People in the congregation might have tears because of the emotion of the event that way. It's so normal. So many emotions are going on there. The joy, tears come with joy, tears come with sadness, and letting go of a daughter, or letting go of a son. There's lots of emotions. So I start this off by saying this idea of crying or having tears at a wedding is a normal thing, and we want to normalize this. We want to make it okay and not judge it, and just have it be a part of the ceremony. And tears, again, are this expression of our deepest feelings and our deepest emotions. And why would we not want to bring them to the ceremony? Why would we not want to bring them to life? Why would we not want to be able to express our deepest feelings and emotions when we need to that way? Tears, again, show a profound love for others, a profound love of something, a profound sort of passion, and that it puts us in touch with something, and we just end up crying. Many of us cry at movies. Many of us cry at certain sort of TV shows or certain things that are very touching for us that way. And again, I want to try to normalize this, and it's okay, and it's very healthy to do. When I'm with other people in situations where people might be crying, people are trying to hide it or trying to just pretend it's not there, or sort of try to sort of shy away from it that way. And I wanted to lift this up today, kind of this idea of expressing emotion, to say this is part of life, and it's an important part of our life to be able to cry, to share tears that way. And crying, again, is an interesting phenomenon in our culture, and it sort of has a difference around gender diversity that way, meaning that that women and girls, it's more acceptable for them to cry, and boys and men are less acceptable for them to cry. You know, boys get messages when they're young, big boys don't cry and all of that. And I think that's so sad. I think the opportunity for men to be able to cry and express their emotions are so important that way. Sometimes when I'm doing a workshop for men or have a chance to work with a group of men, I'll say something like, and so can you remember when you last cried and what was that about? And some men will be able to say, oh yeah, I cried at a wedding, or I cried at this, cried at that. And some men will say, you know, I can't remember when I last cried. I can't remember. And there's no judgment around it. But it's like we've been, as men, taught not to cry and to bottle it up and to stuff it down. And that just is, I'm afraid, so hurtful for us that way, to not be able to express this deep emotion that we have and to let it come forth that way. It's not healthy physiologically, and it's not healthy emotionally to not be able to cry. So as you can tell, I'm sort of a big fan of tears and being able to express them that way. Some of you that are older, like myself, will remember Senator from Maine, Senator Muskie, was a presidential candidate many, many years ago. And he was being interviewed, and I forget exactly what the topic was, but he was so deeply touched by what they were talking about, he started to cry. And back then, this is many years ago, back then it was really not acceptable for a presidential candidate to cry. And it really knocked him out of the race. He wasn't deemed at that point to be strong enough to be president of the United States because he cried. So sad that way. We've seen President Obama cry now, and other sort of world leaders being able to express emotion that way. So I think we're getting better at this that way. And grateful. I'm grateful that things have improved for men in this area, and it's more acceptable for men to have tears that way. And in his article, again in Atlantic Magazine, Arthur Brooks speaks to the benefits of crying and the importance of crying as a way of balancing out our emotions that way. As Brooks says, in some ways crying is a contradiction. It can accompany the most profound grief. Tears, I can remember when I learned that my father had passed away, I just immediately sort of tears, and I went for a long cryful walk out into the woods just to be with myself as I wept the loss of my father. And at the same time, the contradiction that Brooks speaks about is tears can also be brought about by great joy, the deepest sense of joy. So we have great loss and we have great joy bringing about the same sort of reaction of tears. And we might call them sort of grieving tears, lost tears, and then also joyful tears that way. Also, tears can come from a response to anger and frustration that we might have towards somebody or something. And I can remember sort of having some tears around something that I was so angry about and so upset about that tears sort of came to me that way. I was just so angry. But also tears can be brought about by beautiful poetry that way, or beautiful music, or, listening to some beautiful aria, or a singer, or some orchestra that way. I have felt it when we've had the Glens Bowles Symphony perform at the Silver Bay Auditorium in the summers. They play this beautiful, rousing piece, and it just sends emotion through me and through, I think, many people who are listening. So, talking about crying for a minute, crying can be a helpful tool to capture our feelings, and in a way of tapping into our deepest emotional life. Crying can bring about a sense of balance and a sense of inner peace that way, and a pathway to a deeper awareness of our truer nature, our spiritualness, we are spiritual beings. And so crying can really help us tap into that deeper part of who we are as human beings. I think it gets us in touch with our humanity. It helps us get in touch with what's really important for us that way. And we cry because it means something. We're not crying out of it. It means something, so we cry. And it's important to ask ourselves, I think, the question, what are these tears saying? And oftentimes when I'm working with somebody in pastoral counseling or some therapy situation or spiritual direction, and somebody cries, and it happens often, and it's very healthy and an appropriate thing, I'll often say, as somebody begins to get themselves together, I'll say, and what would these tears saying? If these tears could speak, what would they say? And oftentimes beautiful stuff comes from somebody that's just had an opportunity to cry, and the release comes when they're able to speak about those tears and what those tears mean and have meant to them. My own experience of tears, and having been with others who have had tears together, there's this sense of actually feeling a bit better afterwards. Maybe that's your experience too, that after you have a good session of a good crying session, you actually feel better. And actually there's a name for this. After a session, oftentimes the word we use is, it was cathartic for him, or catharsis is the word that's used, having this better feeling, a cathartic experience that comes with tears, a letting go that way. And the word cathartic, catharsis, actually comes from the ancient Greek word kakarthsis. I'm not saying that well, but it's close. Which means actually, this ancient Greek meaning of the word catharsis means purification or cleansing. It means there's an aspect of catharsis of our tears that implies sort of a spiritual purging. We're getting rid of something that we want to express that way. We want to feel and then let go of that way. And crying is often followed by this cathartic feeling of release, of relief, and an inner sense of peace and a greater sense of awareness about who we are and what we're about. And crying can be a very powerful way to regulate our feelings that way, to maintain a balance in our emotional life. We oftentimes have these highs and lows that way, and crying sort of allows us to have these lows, and then we kind of move back into a higher sense of awareness that way, a higher sense of inner joy. And crying actually can bring a sense of inner peace to us. It taps into our divine nature. Dutch psychologist Ad Fingerhorts, is the way we say his name, found in his research that there are two sort of crying triggers that are often what brings us to tears, and his research was consistent among different populations and different cultures. And the first trigger here was helplessness. When we come to a place where we're just totally helpless, we're beside ourselves, we just can't, we're helpless, we can't do much for ourselves, we often come to tears. And the second is great loss, which I've already talked about, the loss of a dear friend, the loss of a family member, the loss of a parent. Great loss and helplessness, both helplessness and profound loss, bring us to the deepest edge of our emotion and taps into that deepest part of us that way. And in addition, there are times when we actually weep for joy. We weep for joy. And this is related to this. There's some new research that was conducted in several different countries that found that they called it happy crying tended to occur during four occasions. And I spoke about the first one already, at a wedding. The times of extraordinary affection, such as a wedding. 55% of positive crying occurs in these moments of extraordinary affection. Wedding, being engaged, this extraordinary sense of love evokes tears 55% of the time tears are expressed. The second one is moments of unusual achievement, such as winning an award. And this is 29% of the time when positive tears are shown. And we've seen this at the Oscars, and we've seen this at other award ceremonies where people have tears. The third expression of tears drops down to 8%, but that's when, in the face of such beauty, music, art, again, a great sort of opera that you've watched or something, 8% of the time we might have tears around that, and we're calling them, again, positive or happy tears that way. And the last one is times of intense amusement. 3% of the time when we might have tears is something that we've watched or something was so amusing to us that way, it evoked tears from us that way. So there seems to be a strong connection between happy crying and sad crying. They are both a response to emotional extremes, highs and lows. And this suggests that tears help us to bring us back to a balance that way and really contribute to a balanced emotional life. Happy tears and sad tears in the same way. Some researchers think that there's a sort of a literal truth to the Jewish proverb, what soap is for the body, tears are for the soul. And in his book, Crying, The Mystery of Tears, biochemist William Fry hypothesized that we actually eliminate stress hormones such as cortisol through tears. The cortisol is released in these tears that way. So let me close with a few thoughts about crying, about tears. Tears are a normal and necessary part of the human experience and of our lives that way. And let's try to normalize these and encourage ourselves to cry that way. There's actually a researcher, his name is Alexander Lowen, psychologist. He's now passed on, but he was a big advocate of crying, and it was an important part of what he thought he was trying to, as a psychologist and the clients he worked with, to express tears on a regular basis. And his thinking was that what we do is by experiencing some aspect of loss each day in our life, we want to express that loss in some way instead of just bottling it that way. So he postulated that by expressing some tears each day, we would avoid this so prolonged sense of buildup and just hold all that tension in that way. And his theory included the idea that we're often in denial of loss, that we deny losses, so we don't actually focus on them, we suppress them, and it actually catches up with us in our emotional life. We don't kind of continue to be as emotionally healthy that way when we keep bottling things up. So to this end, he would teach his clients to actually cry. And I had a session with him because I was really interested in his work and followed some of his work and read some of his work. And he taught me how to cry in some ways, and I was really grateful for that. So this idea of sort of making sure that we normalize tears and that tears are part of everyday life that way. And tears and crying are nothing to be embarrassed about or to feel uncomfortable with or awkward about, and that we just, again, embrace them as a beautiful part of our life experience that way. Number 3, tears are healthy and necessary and are healing for us that way. And we might actually, again, release sort of this cortisol. Number 4, tears help us to get in touch with our deepest self. Tears connect us to what we're most passionate about in life that way. And lastly, tears sort of lead us on this inner path to become more our truest selves. Tears deepen our life experience. Tears are water to the soul. And may we give ourselves permission to express both tears of joy and tears of sorrow. I hope this has been helpful for you today, and I hope the opportunity that you have to talk to others in your life, maybe children or spouses or friends or whatever, around tears and the normalization of that, I think it helps us to be healthier people. Again, thank you for listening this today. Again, I hope it's been helpful. Take care and be well, and we'll look forward to seeing you at a future program. Thank you.